Children in Cuyahoga County are dying in the dark, killed while in the hands of the agency meant to protect them. After a 5-year-old Cleveland girl was beaten to death by her own mother, we launched a months-long investigation into what went wrong and who is to blame.
News 5's Megan Hickey has been covering the story from the very beginning. The little girl who died when social workers said she was safe.
I didn't sugarcoat it. I didn't make it sound pretty. I was like, if you don't get her out this house, she's going to die.
Chilling words from one of the people who tried to stop the death of 5-year-old Tanasia McLeod.
Like, I tried to do everything. I did CPR. I kept feeling her heart.
Another person who tried and failed. The girl's 15-year-old brother, Rayvon Owens, painfully described to me how he watched his mother and her girlfriend savagely beat his 5-year-old sister to death, telling Rayvon not to call police.
I really tried. I really wanted her to wake up, but she just didn't. She just stayed unconscious.
The hardest part of this story to swallow is that we discovered that Rayvon and his legal guardian, Sierra Giles, reported the abuse to Children and Family Services a full 5 months before the girl's brutal death in March. And a third person, a neighbor, tells us she did the same thing.
That was a 5-year-old child, and don't nobody child deserve to be beaten.
Cuyahoga County Children and Family Services confirmed that the complaints were received, but refused to disclose any specific information about the way they were handled, citing state privacy laws. A spokesperson told me a case was opened in February and a social worker made contact with the family 8 times in the 5 weeks leading up to her death. And in the final meeting, just 3 days before her death, social workers found no reason to remove her from the home.
You were a social worker 3 days before. How did you miss it?
We also wanted to know how they missed the warning signs, but it turns out we can't.
Tanasia, who are we here for?
Every single time we've requested information about the case, records documenting the reports of abuse, records showing what social workers found during their visits, we get the same response. A copy and pasted statement that Children's Services investigations and records are not public records, and further are confidential by operation of law, citing a section of the Ohio Revised Code. As it turns out, Ohio's public records laws for child welfare cases are among the most restrictive in the country, so tight that even attorneys representing the children often have to sue for access.
The system is better off at protecting the secrecy of what it does and guarding its immunity against any lawsuit than it is always protecting the children.
Local attorney Joel Levin tells me that it's become nearly impossible to win a wrongful death suit against the county.
They expanded the notion of immunity. They made it harder to sue. They sealed more records.
In fact, it's so hard, his firm has stopped taking cases like Tanasia's. Which led us to our next question. How many other children are there? How common is it for kids to die after the county has been warned of a problem? Dying in the dark. We circumvented DCFS and using public data pieced together what appears to be a tragic answer. Emiliano Terry, beaten and thrown in a dumpster by his mother. Alexandria Hamilton, plunged into scalding water by her mother. Kimshia Rufin, run over by a car. 3 of at least 5 death cases in the last decade involving mothers who already had open cases with Children and Family Services. The Cuyahoga County Coroner's Office ruled them all as homicides. It's a list that rattles Sierra Giles, who is still pushing for answers about Tanasia.
These babies are being murdered underneath the care of CPS, a system that's supposed to protect them.
Giles is far from the first person to question the agency. News 5 first exposed the problem 20 years ago.
Please, there's a fire right next door. It is going up in flames.
When they were being beaten, when they were neglected, when they were hungry, they should have been taken in to the safety net, and they should be alive today.
Our On Your Side investigators unearthed nearly a dozen cases of children who died while in the care of the system. And even then, we heard the same refrain.
We're hampered by the confidentiality laws.
2 commissioners called for a change in state laws to allow DCFS records to be unsealed upon the child's death. Even the county's spokesperson agreed.
Totally agree. I would certainly like to see the law opened up a bit.
But 20 years later, and nothing has changed. We're still fighting for information about exactly how Tanasia McLeod could have slipped through the cracks, and no one in the county would answer our questions on camera.
They obviously could have done more, and they should have done more in retrospect.
Meanwhile, her extended family, the people who tried to save her, worry that this sweet little girl, who couldn't defend herself from the final blows that took her life, won't be the last child to die in the dark.
That is my biggest fear, is that Tanasia won't be the last child. Tanasia would be one of many more children.
Because child homicides are so important in states like Georgia and South Carolina, these records can be obtained immediately upon a child's death. In states like North Carolina and Oklahoma, they can be obtained once a suspect is criminally charged. But neither apply here in Ohio. Megan Hickey, News 5.